By the mid-13th century, the Islamic world faced total eradication from two separate fronts. To the east, the Mongol Empire was leveling major cities, and to the west, Crusader states occupied much of the Levantine coast. This map shows the geography of the 13th century Mediterranean as a tightening pincer. With Mongol forces pushing through Asia and Crusaders entrenched along the sea, the pressure was focused entirely on Egypt. Egypt was the last major domino left standing, but in 1250, the domestic government defending it was overthrown during a radical internal power struggle. A new authority seized the throne in Cairo. The group that took control was a military caste made entirely of kidnapped child slaves. They overthrew their masters and declared themselves the absolute sovereigns of a new sultanate. This political experiment transformed those at the very bottom of the social order into a professionalized military elite, built for the sole purpose of defending the realm against the surrounding invasions. The word Mamluk literally translates to one who is owned. These were young boys, primarily of Turkic and Circassian origin, purchased from the Eurasian steppes. They were brought to Egypt and put through years of training in cavalry warfare, archery, and the use of the lance and sword. But they didn't remain property forever. Once their training was complete, they were formally emancipated, receiving a certificate of manumission that made them elite warriors. Upon being freed, these soldiers entered into a brotherhood known as the Kushtashia. This bond was formed exclusively between Mamluks who had been trained and freed by the same master. The Kushtashia overrode all other human connections. Because they were taken from their homes as children, they had no local family or tribal alliances. Their loyalty was directed strictly toward their military household. This shared training created a ruling class that was insulated from external pressures and optimized specifically for the logistics of war. By 1260, the Mongol forces under Hulagu Khan were moving into Syria. They had already sacked Baghdad, ending the Abbasid Caliphate and destroying one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world. The Mamluks marched out to meet them. On September 3, 1260, the two armies collided in a valley in Palestine, known as Ain Jalut, or the Spring of Goliath. On that battlefield, the Mamluk cavalry achieved what no other military force had managed to do. They shattered the enemy lines and dealt the Mongol Empire its first decisive battlefield defeat. This victory at Ain Jalut stopped the Mongol westward advance. It saved Egypt and North Africa from the destruction that had already claimed much of the east. Ain Jalut demonstrated that the Mamluk system, despite its unconventional origins, was capable of halting the most significant military threats of the 13th century. With the Mongols contained, Sultan Baybars initiated a systematic campaign to eliminate the Crusader states along the coast. This map shows the sequential fall of these territories, from the capture of Caesarea in 1265 to the final expulsion of the European presence. A major achievement in this campaign was the capture of Croc de Chevalier in 1271. It was a massive fortress, and its high walls were previously considered impossible to breach. The Mamluks completed the removal of these coastal states in 1291 with the fall of Acre, ending nearly 2 centuries of Crusader presence in the region. By neutralizing both of these external threats, the Mamluks secured their borders. This permanent security allowed the Sultanate to shift its focus from survival to the expansion of its empire. After Baghdad was destroyed, scholars and jurists fled to Egypt. Cairo replaced the fallen eastern cities as the intellectual center of the Sunni world and the new seat of the Abbasid Caliphate. The sultans used wealth from trade and the spice routes to fund a massive building program. They constructed mosques, hospitals, and schools that transformed the capital's urban landscape. This era produced a distinct architectural style. Note the alternating courses of light and dark stone, called ablock masonry, and the complex honeycomb vaulting above the window, known as muqarnas. Because the Mamluk sultans did not have traditional royal lineages, they used these monumental buildings to legitimize their rule, proving their authority through stone rather than bloodlines. The Sultan Hassan Mosque Madrasa, built in 1356, represents the peak of this architectural era. Its interior courtyard and towering arches were designed on a scale that few other medieval structures could match. The Sultanate eventually fell in 1517, when its traditional cavalry was defeated by the gunpowder-armed forces of the Ottoman Empire. While the political structure ended, over 800 Mamluk-era monuments still stand today. They remain the defining features of historic Cairo. A society of kidnapped slaves became a dynasty of absolute kings, building a civilization of stone that remained long after their military power had faded.